really think you're the most attractive girl.
It's infatuation. There's more to love than...
Sorry. I'm so
I
sorry.
said that I don't really love you in the way that you love me. That's not my fault. There's nothing wrong with my mind.
I'm gonna miss you.
Hester Collier decides one day that there is no way to go but out of this world. She transports her gloomy thoughts into a letter and makes all the necessary arrangements to take. She seals her room, takes too many aspirin pills, puts the letter down on a chest of drawers, and fills her room with gas. As the dreadful minutes of waiting begins, her mind starts filling with flashbacks, and she sees her husband, Sir William Collier, the judge, who's much older than she is and with whom she has a hollow and dreary relationship to this day. And from William, her thoughts shift to Freddie Page, a man whom she loves and whose feelings toward her are the truest. And as Hester's thoughts continue to roam about, we see how she comes across Freddie by accident after the latter survived the Battle of Britain. We see how they resume their relationship that day, how they talk to each other at a bar, and how they spend the night. That night, Hester was entangled with Freddie, and everything seemed simple. But it turned out that those moments led to her laying on the floor alone in the sealed room, awaiting her passing. In the morning, however, she is awakened by a strong slap from Mr. Miller, the self-proclaimed doctor. It seems like her attempt proved futile. From a young man standing near the door, we learn that it's illegal to attempt such a thing. However, the housekeeper, Mrs. Elton, and Mr. Miller immediately turned down his suggestion to turn her in. Hester slowly returns to her senses after most of the company inside her room leaves. She sits up, apologizes to a young man for creating such a mess, and lights her cigarette. When all but the housekeeper leave the place, Hester asks her for discretion. She doesn't want the word to reach Mr. Page. It will only alarm him. And as she lies down to smoke the last of her cigarette alone, her thoughts shift to past events again. Now she's on a double date with Freddie and two of their friends. The men behave like children. After spending their share of time in the war, they are eager to act foolish again. Once outside, Hester and Freddie kiss each other passionately like it is their last night on Earth, and go home. But this way of life for Hester cannot continue forever. The next day, she visits the church, seeking support from the priest, but the latter urges her to return to her husband. From his and God's perspective, Hester must remain loyal first to her husband. When Hester follows his advice, we learn a little more about the relationship between Sir William and her. It seems like William's mother is living with them, and she meddles in their relationship far too often and far too radically. In this particular instance, Hester's and her husband's beds are separated because of the mother's views. At night, when all are gathered for supper, we see Hester and her mother-in-law disagree over sports, and we see how much contempt there is in the way the mother addresses her. William should be the one protecting her in those kinds of moments and the one to help them find common ground. Of course, however, we see that his attempts are miserable. He's also under the huge influence of his mother. In the morning, Hester walks into the dining room from the garden, puts on a flat and fake smile, and joins her mother-in-law. They have a short conversation filled with hidden bombs. But before they can continue, William enters with his safe and ignorant smile. All the way, as Hester makes herself pour the tea, she is catapulted by words from the mother, meant to hurt her or to lure her into a fight, while William remains weak. He only addresses his mother and tries to make her change the subject. But in the end, she still finds a way to steer the conversation around and insult Hester. In the end, it all becomes too much, so Hester goes upstairs to pack her bag. She will be leaving for town early this morning. Once upstairs, she calls Freddie and arranges their next meeting, totally unaware of the fact that her husband is standing behind her. And so now William knows about the affair and is dumbfounded. Hester remains silent all the way, only speaking up to answer his questions until William urges her to resolve this issue in a manner so that his mother won't find out. Even in a moment like this, he does his best to please his mother. When the night comes, both are in the car. After what seems like a long silence, William assumes that this affair was only a little game she wished to play, but Hester argues. She loves Freddie, and all she did was driven by love. Despite all this, however, William spits words of contempt in her direction, saying that he will never give her a divorce. He will do everything to make it as difficult for her as possible. And this bitterness from William enraged Hester. The car is filled with her shouting, but when she calms down, she justifies her actions, saying that there was no way for her to continue living in those conditions. It was getting too hard to maintain the relationship, so she did it. But no words seem to soften William's heart, so before he leaves, he reminds her once more that he won't give her a divorce no matter what. The next day, Freddie brought her to his home. It is the same place where Hester now resides. Mrs. Elton used to be just as delightful as it seems now. When Hester follows Freddie upstairs, Esther calls her by the name of Paige, and since Hester isn't yet familiar with her new name, she doesn't turn back at first. And when she enters her new home, we are transported to the present again. After the cigarette is all burned out, Freddie comes in quickly. He's in a great mood, boasting about his recent activities. But Hester remains silent, facing the window the whole way. Then Freddie tries to somehow enliven the mood. He puts on music, and finally, Hester starts speaking. She asks him about his weekend, and we learn that Freddie plays golf. Throughout the weekend, he won 7 matches and was so impressive that today he has a job interview in the evening. He speaks and speaks, but eventually, he finds that not once has Hester looked at him since he came in the door. And suddenly it dawns on him. Hester had a birthday while he played golf miles away. Freddie feels terribly guilty that he forgot. Silence falls. Almost grudgingly, Freddie turns the music off and hugs her from behind. He apologizes over and over, and soon Hester's breathing becomes rapid from passion. It all turned out great for her. Now that Freddie believes everything is his fault, she won't have to say anything about her attempt, and soon her gloomy attitude will be forgotten. She turns to him and embraces him firmly and passionately, but unfortunately for her, Freddie suddenly longs for a cigarette. He reaches into her pocket and finds the letter. It is queer, for sure, so he steps back and observes it. Despite Hester's begging, he still reads it. Hester cannot watch, so she turns away, but suddenly Freddie bolts out of the room. Hester screams and shouts to him to come back, but when he doesn't return, she quickly gets dressed, goes to the mirror, and hears a knock on the door. Unexpectedly, it's William, so Hester won't be going anywhere yet. He walks inside, and after their short, quiet, and balanced conversation, he asks her about what happened. He's a judge, so telling him about something that is considered a crime is dangerous, but Hester still tells him. It seems like William still considers himself her husband, so after a while of discussion, his face becomes softer, and even their conversation becomes that of old friends. Hester even feels happy to see him. William found that his anger after their last conversation faded away gradually. Now he feels ashamed for his actions and his last words. He says that he'll give her the divorce and then asks her why she decided to take her life. Anger, hatred, and shame toward herself are the reasons Hester names William indeed came to her, thinking that her condition would make him feel better, but now he feels truly sorry for her. He fails to understand why she ran to Freddie, who once was his friend but betrayed him and couldn't give her anything. But Hester argues that Freddie did give her something from time to time, himself, and it is the greatest gift somebody can give. Even now, he still loves her. This is how the discussion about Freddie ends, and even though William is still angry at Hester and Freddie, he wants to know if there's anything he can do to help. There is no way, of course, but to make him feel better. Hester still says that she will try to find a way. Now it is time for William to go, but before he walks out, he asks her something. He is interested, if they were able to have a child when they were together, would that change anything? Hester's answer makes it obvious that it wouldn't have. But still, William walks away smiling. As he leaves, Hester hastily puts on her coat and runs to Freddie. After a good deal of running, she walks inside a crowded and noisy bar and finds him by the counter, swallowed by thoughts. His friend Jackie is also there. Hester urges Freddie to speak outside, so they all leave the bar with stiff faces. Freddie looks as if he's about to explode, and that is exactly what happens right away as they walk out into the street. Infuriated, he starts screaming. Only because he forgot her birthday did he return home to see the supposedly last letter from his wife. Jackie quickly feels awkward and tries to leave, but Freddie tells him to stay. He wants him to listen to the letter, and even though Hester begs and pleads with him not to, Freddie takes it out and reads it. It says that Hester's decision isn't anybody's fault. The type of relationship that they have can never change because neither one of them can alter their feelings. Freddie is in a complete rage. Hester tries to object with a trembling voice, but there is no way Freddie will find his temper now. Hester was the one wanting to leave together even though she was still married. Freddie wasn't the one to propose it, and he never lied to her about the fact that his love for her was much weaker than hers. Hester is left speechless. Jackie offers them to get back inside and resume the conversation there, but this is Freddie's answer to that. He asks for a shilling from Jackie, looks at it for a second, and throws it at her to further humiliate her dignity. Hester's dumbfounded for a while, and when she finds her wits again, she asks him for the last time to come home. But after what he read, Freddie has no intention of seeing her ever again. And so Hester is left with Jackie on the street. Even the latter, who's been friends with him since childhood, doesn't approve of his reaction, but he still thinks that something isn't right in their relationship, and that Freddie's works aren't entirely untrue. However, Jackie is a good-hearted person, and he assures Hester that he will take Freddie home today and try to talk to him. There might still be a chance. Hester goes home alone after that, and her thoughts shift to the past again. She remembers the time they visited a museum, and we understand that their relationship hasn't been all soft and passionate all the time. They are completely different from each other and have been growing bitter toward each other gradually. That bitterness went so far that they fought even over a piece of art. Freddie isn't very educated in the arts, so he makes a joke, and Hester's reaction makes him feel witless. Out of nowhere, he says that people like him who were courageous but not that smart saved the whole country in the war, and this enraged Hester. Their argument goes on for a little while until Freddie storms out. As he says, he's going to the Impressionists. When Hester returns home alone, Mrs. Elton shows her the letters that, in her opinion, were sent by accident. They are sent to somebody named Mrs. Collier. But Hester tells her that it's sent correctly, it's hers, and with that, Hester reveals that she's not married to Freddie, and that her real last name isn't Page, it's Collier. Mrs. Elton is taken aback by this. She runs a respectable house, and he needs no trouble. However, she says that she will remain true to this secret. Then, after expressing gratitude toward Mrs. Elton, Hester goes upstairs and finds Freddie lying alone with a gloomy face. He apologizes to her, and naturally, Hester forgives him. She even asks why he ran to the Impressionists, and Freddie makes the second joke today. He only did it for Monet. This time Hester laughs, and their fight is completely forgotten. There is no stability in their relationship, and there is no consistency in their love, but there is undoubtedly some unquestionable passion. In the next scene, we get back into the present. Hester calls Jackie's girlfriend and asks to get Freddie on the phone. When Freddie answers, Hester immediately starts talking and pleads with him not to hang up. Fortunately for her, he's much calmer now, so from their short conversation, we understand that Freddie will start his new job in 7 days. Hester acts happy after hearing this news, and with the forced stability in her voice, she begs him to come home and take his things himself. She wants to have a chance to say goodbye, but just like before, Freddie knows perfectly well that Hester has no intention of letting him go that easily. So, without saying anything else, he hangs up. Hester rushes down to the subway station, breathing heavily, and her mind is taken by her memory again. She remembers the sound of sirens in the distance and the shaking of the ground above the subway system when the war was raging outside. She was living there underground with many other people who were unable to fight. William was there too when Freddie sacrificed his life every day. Suddenly the memory fades, and Hester finds herself in front of the moving train. When it passes, she starts walking slowly up the stairs and into the street. Unexpectedly, she comes across a car, from which William appears in front of her. He is worried about Hester and quite unable to grasp what is happening in her mind. It seems like for Hester, his arrival is more or less a happy surprise, so after being invited, she sits in the car. William tries to better understand the reasoning behind her actions. Hester puts it simply, it was because of love. And love can be as close to death as it is to life. William is still not so sure. He assumes that more than love, it was lust, and this upsets her. After dealing with her deepest feelings, she now knows that one cannot put a label on somebody truly in love that easily. Freddie is the manifestation of life for her. With that, she walks out of the car and continues talking about Freddie. He was never happy after the war, and he always envied William. For his career, for his life, and perhaps for his wife as well. They begin discussing it, but suddenly Freddie appears on the street. Very drunk, he scolds both of them loudly and gets inside the house. After he disappears, William attempts once more to win Hester back. Hester knows what he's offering and knows that he's a good-hearted person who loves her, but she sees no future with him anymore. So she gives him the parting gift and kisses him gently for the last time. The kiss does not significantly affect William, but before he leaves, he gives her a present too. It's sonnets, something that Hester always loved. And with that, William and she share one last look and are separated for good, not without tears. And so Hester gets inside the house, but before she can start upstairs, Mrs. Elton stops her. She wants to tell her something about what happened earlier, but suddenly her husband calls her, and she rushes to be with him. Mr. Elton is very ill. With one foot already on the other side, he finds it hard to breathe. But Mrs. Elton is always with him, giving him the power to face even death. The picture that Hester is looking at is a demonstration of what love is. It is the armor that gives you the courage to face the most dreadful of enemies. This is what Mrs. Elton tells her after her husband goes to sleep, and with those words still inside her head, she walks to her room. Freddie has the door locked, but he lets her in. For a good while, both were silent. Starting this conversation is tough when both of them know that it might be their last. Eventually, Freddie finds his voice and tells her about the news. He's going to Rio. His South American employer allowed him to become a test pilot again. Hester objected to that quickly. She knows that Freddie has lost everything crucial for a pilot, but he assures her that after a month or two, he will get right back on track. Suddenly, Hester realizes that Freddie might be intending to go alone. So she decides to bluff and asks him when the two of them are going. Freddie expected that, of course, so with cold decisiveness, he says that he is going alone. And not for lack of love. He is going alone because they proved to be lethal for each other. It all got to the point where Hester attempted to take her own life. All he can do now is walk away and hope that the effect of their separation won't be as destructive as their relationship was. Hester is lost and desperate. She sees no point in living after he disappears. She tries to deny that everything is over and asks him to stay for the night. At first, Freddie is reluctant, but when he realizes that all of his stuff is here and he has to pack anyway, he yields. Now he has to do anything that is in his power to be strong and not let Hester's stares and words melt his heart. When the morning comes, we understand that he was successful in that endeavor. We see him, dressed finely, trying to sneak out of the house, but the creaking floor still wakes Hester up. She comes to see him and compliments his sharpness. Freddie is calm and still, not allowing himself to say more than is necessary, with a smile on his face. He does look sharp, but Hester notices that his shoes need cleaning. After seeing Mrs. and Mrs. Elton's love, she knows that to take care of someone's dignity, is to love them truly, so she takes the shoes away from Freddie and lays them on the table. Suddenly, Freddie urges her to put them somewhere else since it is considered a bad habit to lay shoes on the table, but Hester pays it no heed. She cleans the shoes as if she were doing her last chore and hands them back to him. This is when the realization comes. Freddie is leaving. For some time, they discuss the very ordinary details of their plans, Freddie's travel route, the details about rent, and the fact that Hester must start everything from a blank page. Freddie finishes packing, then stands up, gathers his coat and hat, and says goodbye. He thanks her for everything and asks her to be safe, and after they share the last few words, it's Freddie's eyes that are watery. This moment isn't any less tough for him. He is the deep blue sea, and he realized far too late that the girl he loves would drown in his waters. There is nothing he can do. The sea cannot become a lake. So Freddie turns away and leaves. Hester finds his gloves, then, and after smelling the familiar smell, she burst into tears. She was stuck between the devil and the sea, but after the sea is gone, she must find herself all over again and face the devil alone.